This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.
The breathtaking, ang pangmalakasan, the Philippine Arena, baby! Let's go!
Nandito po tayo ngayon sa Philippine Arena!
Yeah!
Dito, 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 dito sa arena. Presto, presto. Nakitaping ng Net 25 para sa happy time. Yo, ding dong, CGM, Tutsi, kompleto kami, malalakas kami. Oh, wala na ulan! Halika na! Ito na ulan na ulan.
Alvin Chorizo! Alvin, ba't nandito ka?
I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are the top headlines tonight.
New data from the World Food Program has today confirmed the magnitude of the hunger emergency gripping Tigray, where at least 4 million people face severe hunger and 350,000 of them are facing famine.
G7 leaders meet for the first time in person. Talks in nearly 2 years with an expected pledge to donate 1 billion COVID vaccine doses to the world's poorest countries as part of a show of Western democratic unity against the planet's most pressing issues.
And here in the country, fully vaccinated senior citizens residing in areas under GCQ and MGCQ can now enjoy more liberty despite the pandemic after the government allowed them to leave their homes.
And Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal clash for the 58th time in their historic rivalry on the same court where they first met 15 years ago, with a place in the French Open final at stake.
First, new data from the World Food Program has today confirmed the magnitude of the hunger emergency gripping Tigray, where at least 4 million people face severe hunger and 350,000 of them are facing famine. The lack of information on people's food security in Western Tigray in the IPC analysis is also deeply worrying. The UN World Food Program has swiftly mounted an emergency food assistance operation. Other agencies are also struggling to reach many of the rest of Tigray's hungry as humanitarian access is still being blocked by armed groups.
So this is a region that even prior to the conflict has been affected by shocks in recent years. We had the desert locust this past year, hailstorms, some pockets of the region that are already chronically affected by drought. It means that this is an area that's already a bit on the edge. And so now with the conflict, the disruption of health systems, the collapse of markets in many areas, the inability to plant today because people don't have access to seeds, fertilizer, or the security to be able to plant, means that for WFP, the #1 priority is going to continue to be that humanitarian assistance until the situation allows people to resume their livelihoods activities and meet their own food security needs.
Violence and conflict are allowing hunger to tighten its grip on millions of Tigrayans who have been forced to flee their homes. Out of teams of 53 villages visited by WFP, 50% of mothers and almost a quarter of children screened are malnourished. Millions of people urgently needing food. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, winner of the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize, sent troops into the northern region in November to detain and disarm leaders of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the region's former ruling party. He said the move came in response to TPLF attacks on federal army camps. Though he vowed the conflict would be brief, fighting continued more than 6 months later, and reports of atrocities, including the widespread use of rape, are proliferating. Many leaders have warned of a major catastrophe.
Meanwhile, G7 leaders meet on Friday for the first in-person talks in nearly 2 years, with an expected pledge to donate 1 billion COVID vaccine doses to the world's poorest countries as part of a show of Western democratic unity against the planet's most pressing issues. The club of leading economies, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the United States, say a joint approach is the world's best chance for recovering from the global health crisis and tackling climate change. President Joe Biden set the tone on Wednesday, ditching Donald Trump's isolationist stance on global affairs to ram home a message of resolve by the G7 and NATO against both Beijing and Moscow as he heads on to his first sit-down with Russian President Vladimir Putin next week in Geneva. Take a look.
Importantly, this is the mRNA vaccine, which has proven to be extremely effective against COVID-19 and every known variant of that virus thus far. These 500 million vaccines will start to be shipped in August, as quickly as they roll off the manufacturing line. 200 million of these doses will be delivered this year, 2021, and 300 million more will be delivered in the first half of 2022. Let me be clear. Just as with the 80 million doses we previously announced, the United States is providing these 500,000 doses with no strings attached. Let me say it again, with no strings attached. Our vaccine donations don't include pressure for favors or potential concessions. We're doing this to save lives, to end this pandemic. That's it, period.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said the European Union aims to donate at least 100 million COVID-19 vaccine doses to low and middle income countries by the end of 2021. That includes a pledge by France and Germany to donate 30 million doses each, with Italy donating 15 million doses. France has also said it has donated 184,000 doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to Senegal through the COVAX vaccine sharing program.
Now, on the eve of the G7 Summit in Cornwall, Southwest England, President Joe Biden, as we heard earlier, calls a U.S. donation of 500 million COVID vaccine doses to poorer countries a historic step in the fight against the global pandemic. Take a look.
America knows firsthand the tragedies of this pandemic. We've had more people die in the United States than anywhere in the world. Nearly 600,000 of our fellow Americans, moms, dads, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, grandparents, more deaths from COVID-19 in the United States than from World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, and 9/11 combined. We know the tragedy. We also know the path to recovery. In my direction, the United States will purchase an additional 500 million doses from Pfizer vaccine, that will donate nearly 100 low and lower middle income countries. They will be the beneficiaries. Let me say that again. The United States will purchase 500 million doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine to donate to nearly 100 nations that are in dire need in the fight against this pandemic. That's a historic step.
The vaccines will be distributed through the international COVAX program to low and lower middle income nations. And the announcement came on top of an earlier pledge to donate some 80 million vaccines by the end of June, as well as a $2 billion contribution to COVAX funding.
Now, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson hailed the UK-US relationship as indestructible after his first meeting with US President Joe Biden ahead of the G7 Leaders Summit. Take a look.
We should affirm that. And the talks were great. They went on for a long time. We covered a huge range of subjects. And it's wonderful to listen to the Biden administration and to Joe Biden, because there's so much that they want to do together with us, from security, NATO, to climate change. And it's fantastic. It's a breath of fresh air, a lot of things they want to do together.
We affirmed the special relationship, as is not said lightly, the special relationship between our people. And we renewed our commitment to defending the enduring democratic values that both our nations share, that are the strong foundation of our partnership. Today, we build on that commitment with a revitalized Atlantic Charter, updated to reaffirm that promise while speaking directly to the key challenges of this century: cybersecurity, emerging technologies, global health, and climate change.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and US President Joe Biden agreed on a new version of the Atlantic Charter aimed at leading the world's pandemic recovery and bolstering ties. The new pact, modeled on the 1941 Accord signed by Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt, aims to emulate the original accord, which shaped the post-war world order by promoting democracy, free trade, and opportunity. The 2021 Charter will cover everything from global defense and security to rebuilding from coronavirus and curbing climate change, according to Johnson's Downing Street office.
Meanwhile, Prince Charles hailed Filipino medical frontliners in the United Kingdom as the two nations mark 75 years of diplomatic ties. In a special message posted through the page of British Ambassador Daniel Pruise, the Prince of Wales said the UK is fortunate to have thousands of Filipino nurses and medical professionals helping in their response against COVID-19. Let's listen in.
I'm delighted to send my warmest wishes to everyone in the Philippines in this special year when we celebrate the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our two countries. The bonds of friendship between us are stronger than ever. At a time when we have faced the unprecedented challenges of the coronavirus, those links have provided the foundation for us to work together towards a better future. We are more fortunate than we perhaps realize to have many thousands of nurses and other healthcare workers from the Philippines working in the United Kingdom, particularly in the National Health Service. To these wonderfully selfless people, I wanted to offer my most heartfelt gratitude for the outstanding care and comfort you give to your patients. You have made a truly remarkable contribution to the health and well-being of so many people across the country at such a difficult time. My fondest thoughts are with the Philippines and all those who wish to join me in celebrating our profoundly important relationship.
Here in the Philippines now, the Department of Health today reported 3,190 new recoveries from COVID-19. And in its latest COVID-19 bulletin, the agency said this brought the country's recovery tally to 1,216,486 497, or 93.6% of the total 1,300,349 infections since the pandemic started last year. Another 6,800 or 6,686 new cases were also reported, raising the country's active cases to 61,345, or 4.7% of all infections. Of these active cases, it said most were exhibiting mild symptoms at 91.6%, followed by the asymptomatic at 4.3%, those with severe symptoms at 1.7%, those in critical condition at 1.2%, and those with moderate symptoms at 1.5%. Based on data gathered on Wednesday, a total of 49,371 tests for COVID-19 were administered with a positivity rate of 13.3%.
First, let's head on over to Japan, where 18,000 Olympic workers, including referees and volunteers, will be vaccinated from next week to try to build confidence on the upcoming Olympic Games. Here's Dennis Liu joining us live. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, Alma. Good evening to you, to CJ, and to all our televiewers. Organizers said around 18,000 Tokyo Olympics workers, including referees and volunteers, will be vaccinated from next week as they try to build confidence that the Games will be safe. Tokyo 2020 chief Seiko Hashimoto said she hoped the vaccinations would allow staff to participate in event operations with peace of mind. Listen to this. She said the jobs will target those interacting closely with the athletes on a frequent basis. They include referees, Olympic Village staff, employees and contractors, airport employees, doping testing officials, and assistants from the National Olympic and Paralympic committees. Some of the 70,000 volunteers will also be included if they are expected to have regular close contact with athletes. Hashimoto said the vaccinations would begin on June 18th, with second doses administered before the Games open on July 23rd. With just 6 weeks until the pandemic-postponed Games open, officials are still battling domestic opposition and fear that the event could spread the coronavirus. Japan's vaccination program got off to a slow start, and while it is now picking up pace, just over 4% of the population is fully vaccinated, with close to 13% having had a first dose. Public opinion polls have tended to show most in Japan oppose holding the Games this year, favoring cancellation or a further postponement. Organizers are trying to drill home their message that tough restrictions will keep participants and the Japanese public safe. They have slashed the number of overseas participants and will require daily testing of athletes, including those already vaccinated. Overseas fans have been banned, and a decision on how many local spectators will be allowed, if any, is expected later this month. This is the latest for now. Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Dennis, for your update. Looking forward to more updates coming from Japan, especially with this Olympics as we get near to that special date. Thank you very much, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Alma. Reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
Back here in the Philippines, fully vaccinated senior citizens residing in areas under General Community Quarantine, or GCQ, and Modified GCQ can now enjoy more liberty despite the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic after the government allowed them to leave their homes. Here's presidential spokesperson Harry Roque.
Pinayagan din ng inyong IETF na lumabas na ang mga fully vaccinated senior citizens sa mga lugar na nasa General Community Quarantine at Modified General Community Quarantine. Pwede na lumabas si lolo at lola. Subject ito sa mga kondisyon tulad ng presentation ng duly issued COVID-19 vaccination card at pagsunod sa minimum public health standards. Kaya mga lolo-lola, kung naiinip na sa bahay, magpabakuna na po tayo. Ipinagbabawal pa din po sa mga fully vaccinated senior citizens ang interzonal travel maliban sa nauna ng pinayagang point-to-point interzonal travel.
Meanwhile, people residing in the National Capital Region Plus can now visit gyms and historical sites, according to Malacanang. This after the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases approved Thursday the partial reopening of gyms and other indoor non-contact sports. Again, let's take a look.
Balitang IATF po tayo. Nagpulong ang inyong IATF kahapon, Huwebes, June 10, kung saan pinayagan ang pagbubukas ng gyms at fitness studios at iba pang indoor non-contact sports venues tulad ng skating rinks at racket sports courts sa National Capital Region plus areas at 30% venue capacity. Kailangan ng mga gyms na binanggit kong venues ng Safety Seal Certification bago sila makapagbukas. Ulitin ko po hindi po ibig sabihin bukas na ang gyms. Kinakailangan kumuha muna sila ng Safety Seal Certification. Galing po yan sa DTI at sa DOH bago sila makapagbukas. Pinayagan na rin magbukas ang historical sites at museums sa National Capital Region plus areas at 20% venue capacity. Kailangan nilang sumunod sa health at safety protocols. Kailangan din ang pagsang-ayon ng local government units kung saan naroon ang mga sites na ito. Ngunit bawal pa rin po ang guided tours sa historical sites at museums.
Here in the Philippines, Malacanang also said today that all fully vaccinated individuals in the Philippines who wish to travel overseas need to first secure a certification indicating that they already received 2 jabs against COVID-19. This developed after the IATF EID revised on Thursday the guidelines on inbound international travel to any port of the Philippines of all fully vaccinated individuals who have been inoculated in the Philippines. Again, here's presidential spokesperson Ari Roque.
Speaking of fully vaccinated individuals, inamendahan ng inyong IATF ang guidelines ng inbound international travel to any point of the Philippines of all fully vaccinated individuals who have been vaccinated in the Philippines lamang po na nakasaad sa IATF Resolution number 119. Una, nilagyan po ng date of effectivity ang nasabing guideline which is June 16, 2021. Pangalawa, nilinaw ng IATF na kailangan dala o hawak ng isang fully vaccinated individual ang kanyang vaccination card na kailangan ma-verify bago siya umalis ng bansa at bago ang kanyang boarding. Kailangan din mabigyan siya ng certification bago ang kanyang departure. Ang certification na ito ay magagaling sa Department of Information and Communications Technology o sa City Health Officer ng local government unit na nag-administer ng last dose para sa kanyang full vaccination. Yan po ang latest sa inyong IATF. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.
More than a dozen Indonesian McDonald's outlets were temporarily shut on Wednesday over virus fears as the chain's new BTS meal deal sparked frenzied buying from fans in the K-pop mad country. Take a look.
Ya, ini untuk hari ini kita segel untuk McD Jalan Tambak. Kebetulan memang melanggar untuk prokes berkerumun melebihi kapasitas ya. Kebetulan kita langsung tidak lanjuti untuk kita segel selama 1 kali 24 jam.
Jakarta and several other cities slapped closure stickers on at least 13 outlets that were deluged with online food delivery drivers picking up a meal set named after the hugely popular Korean boy band. Indonesia is one of the hardest hit nations in Asia, and Jakarta authorities did not respond to requests for comment, but local media said 5 stores in the capital were shot over BTS meal orders. The meal set of chicken nuggets, fries, and a drink, first made available in Indonesia on Wednesday, has been on offer in dozens of countries since May. BTS have become global superstars with millions of fans around the world since their debut in 2013.
In other news, South Africa has officially entered its third wave of coronavirus infections, according to health authorities, with rising caseloads and a sluggish vaccine rollout, fueling fears of fresh strain on the health system. South Africa technically entered the third wave today as the national 7-day moving average incidence of 5,959 cases now exceeds the world wave or the new wave threshold as defined by the Ministerial Advisory Committee, that according to the National Institute for Communicable Diseases on Thursday. The Health Ministry later announced that it had detected over 9,100 cases in 24 hours, approaching the levels seen at the peak of South Africa's second wave in December. Chilly winter weather is also fueling concerns of a resurge in Africa's worst hit country. 4 of South Africa's 9 provinces were hit by a third infection wave in late May, including the most populous Gauteng province, home to the administrative capital Pretoria and financial hub Johannesburg. President Cyril Ramaphosa last month tightened a nighttime curfew and reintroduced limits on social gatherings in a bid to stem the spread of the virus. To date, South Africa has recorded more than 1.7 million coronavirus cases, around 34% of the continent's reported infections, of which at least 57,410 have been fatal.
Health authorities in South Korea said it will extend its current virus restriction measures for another 3 weeks and plans to adopt eased measures as part of a set of new distancing rules afterwards. According to Yonhap News Agency, currently the Greater Seoul area, along with the southeastern city of Daeju and the resort island of Jeju, is under level 2 distancing in the 5-level scheme, while the rest of the country is under level 1.5. The ban on gatherings of 5 or more people nationwide will also be in place, but crowd capacity at outdoor sporting events across the country will increase beginning Monday before introducing revamped social distancing guidelines. In areas under level 2 social distancing, outdoor stadiums can operate at 30% of their capacity, up from the current 10%. For stadiums outside of the capital area, the allowance is expanded from 30 to 50%. The authorities also plan to allow a maximum of 4,000 attendees for popular music concerts, which had only allowed an audience of fewer than 100 people. For entertainment facilities in the wider capital area that have been closed since early April, operations will be banned for another 3 weeks. Earlier, the authorities also announced that restaurants, cafes, karaoke, businesses and other entertainment establishments can operate until midnight in the Greater Seoul area, 2 hours more than the current curfew at 10 p.m. starting in July.
The Philippines is once again polio-free, the World Health Organization said today, after a successful vaccination campaign that has raised hopes for COVID-19 inoculations in a country plagued by mistrust of jabs. Polio re-emerged in the country in 2019, nearly 2 decades after its last cases were detected, sparking a nationwide effort to immunize millions of children against the crippling disease. At least 17 people were infected, but health authorities said they have not detected the virus in a child or the environment in the past 16 months. Rabindra Abayasinj, the WHO representative in the Philippines, said more than 80% of unvaccinated children were immunized in the nationwide effort, which he said was adequate to interrupt the transmission. The 2019 outbreak began shortly after deadly dengue fever and measles epidemics, and as vaccination coverage plunged partly due to the botched rollout of a dengue shot a few years earlier. Polio is highly infectious and can lead to paralysis and even death. There is no known cure so far.
Dengue fever infections dropped dramatically in an Indonesian study where a bacteria was introduced into disease-carrying mosquitoes, offering hope in the battle against an illness that sickens millions annually around the world. Results of the 3-year study published in the New England Journal of Medicine this week found that infecting dengue-carrying mosquitoes with a harmless bacteria called Wolbachia led to a 77% drop in human cases. Infections requiring hospitalization also fell by 86% in Wolbachia-treated areas of Yogyakarta, a city on Java Island where the experiment was conducted. Wolbachia suppresses the ability of the virus to replicate in dengue-carrying Aedes aegypti mosquitoes and cause infections when they bite humans. Researchers said previous trials involving Wolbachia, commonly found in fruit flies and other insects, also showed positive results in reducing dengue cases. Scientists hope the method could be a game changer in a global battle against the disease, which can sometimes be fatal. Researchers also said studies have also shown the Wolbachia method can be effective in preventing the transmission of Zika, chikungunya, yellow fever, and other mosquito-borne illnesses.
A man was found dead in a submerged car after floods hit southeast Australia on Thursday, according to authorities. Parts of Australia have been experiencing strong winds, snow, and rainfall, with downpours in the Gippsland region, causing fast-rising floodwaters. Victoria State Police said a man believed to be aged in his 60s was found dead in a partially submerged car at the village of Woodside, about 2 hours' drive from Melbourne. Police said the circumstances surrounding his death are being investigated. People in nearby low-lying areas had been ordered to evacuate their homes earlier on Thursday morning. In March, torrential downpours caused vast flooding across eastern Australia, damaging thousands of homes and leaving 2 people dead. Scientists have warned that Australia, which suffered devastating bushfires in 2019 until 2020, can expect more frequent and more extreme weather events as a result of climate change.
In other news, the UN rights chief said that violence was escalating across Myanmar, warning that the country had plunged into a human rights catastrophe since the February 1 coup. Pointing to reported military buildup in several regions of the country, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet called for a halt to the already spiraling violence to avert even greater loss of life and a deepening humanitarian emergency. Take a look.
In just over 4 months, Myanmar has gone from being a fragile democracy to a human rights catastrophe.
The UN rights chief pointed to credible reports that security forces have used civilians as human shields, shelled civilian homes and churches, and blocked humanitarian access, including by attacking aid workers. Bachelet stressed that the military behind the coup, also known as Tatmadaw, have a duty to protect civilians. Bachelet slammed the sweeping arrests in the country of activists, journalists, and opponents of the regime, citing credible sources saying at least 4,804 people remain in arbitrary detention. She also voiced alarm at reports of detainees being tortured and of collective punishment meted out to family members of activists.
In a related news, the UN said the country team in Myanmar remained deeply concerned over the continued use of force against children. Take a look.
And from Myanmar, the UN country team there says they remain deeply concerned over the continued use of force against children. They call on security forces to refrain from violence and keep children and young people out of harm's way. The UN's Children's Fund said that 56 children have reportedly been killed by security forces since the military took control of the government on Friday.
Security forces have fired on civilian protests with sniper rifles, machine guns, and mortar rounds in the months since the February coup that ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. More than 800 people believe or have been killed and thousands others wounded in a running crackdown on opposition to the military regime, according to rights groups.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Protect yourself and loved ones. Use Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant that kills 500 strains of bacteria, fungi, and viruses such as coronavirus and other disease-causing microorganisms. Also potent against viruses in pets. It kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes. Dissolve 1 teaspoon in 1 liter of water. Apply on areas for disinfection or use it for misting. Protect Plus Gold.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Oil demand is set to rise above pre-pandemic levels by the end of next year. That, according to the IEA, but producers have sufficient capacity rise to the challenge. In its first detailed look at next year, in its regular monthly review of the oil market, the International Energy Agency sees a gradual return of demand as vaccine distribution widens and economic activity returns to normal in many countries and sectors. By end 2022, demand should surpass pre-COVID levels, it said. Oil demand tanked by a record 8.6 million barrels per day, or MBD, last year as countries shut down swathes of their economies as the coronavirus spread around the world. The IEA expects it to rebound by 5.4 million barrels per day this year and a further 3.1 MBD next year. However, the Paris-based agency that advises oil-consuming nations warned that the recovery will be uneven, not only amongst regions, but across sectors and products. Demand is expected to recover faster in wealthy nations with earlier access to vaccines, while some sectors like aviation lag as some travel restrictions remain in place and more people work from home than before.
In other business news, Britain's economy grew 2.3% in April as the government eased a lockdown, official data showed, with Finance Minister Rishi Sunak cautiously welcoming the data as the Delta variant spreads. It was the fastest monthly output for UK gross domestic product since July last year, as government restrictions affecting economic activity continued to ease, the Office for National Statistics said in a statement. Britain's economy had contracted 1.5% overall in the first quarter, although had already begun to bounce back strongly in March with output of 2.1%. April's growth was driven by the service sector, which jumped 3.4% as consumers once again started to visit physical stores, restaurants, and bars, and as more children returned to on-site lessons, the ONS said. Since May, the government has further eased restrictions, with people now allowed to eat and drink inside restaurants and bars, having initially been only able to sit outside.
And the finance ministers from the wealthy G7 nations have endorsed a global minimum corporate tax rate of at least 15%, rallying behind a U.S.-backed plan targeting tech giants and other multinationals accused of not paying enough. Patricia Rodriguez reports.
Finance ministers from wealthy G7 nations on Saturday endorsed a global minimum corporate tax rate of at least 15%. This supports a U.S.-backed plan targeting tech giants and other multinationals accused of not paying enough. British Finance Minister Rishi Sunak, who chaired the talks held in person after an easing of COVID-19 restrictions, expressed delight on this historic agreement to reform the global tax system. Let's listen in.
But what this deal does is ensure that with a minimum rate of tax that we can make sure there's a level playing field for countries and companies wherever they're operating, ensuring that they pay the right tax in the right places at the right time. And that principle of fairness is something that I think is a big prize for everyone. We've always been clear that the digital services tax that we've implemented was meant to be a temporary solution until there was multilateral agreement applied consistently around the world. We've always said that is preferable, and when that happens, then obviously the DSTs can be removed. But this is the first step on that process, reaching agreement here today. It is a historic moment, but that's not the end of the journey. The next step is the G20 Summit, chaired by my colleague Daniele, and we're looking forward to being in Venice next month to conclude these discussions in that group, and then beyond through the OECD.
The G7, comprising Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States, hopes to finalize the tax agreement at next month's gathering of the expanded G20 Finance Ministers Group. The landmark move comes as governments seek to repair finances battered during the pandemic by slashed tax receipts, plus vast spending and borrowing. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
Back here in the Philippines, the Department of Trade and Industry is processing 600 applications of establishments securing a safety seal, a good housekeeping seal, to ensure that the business establishment is following minimum health protocols. In a Laging Handa briefing today, DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said the agency has approved some safety seal applications since it was rolled out early this year. Take a look.
The certificate bago ho sila makapagbukas, but at least the industry will be allowed to reopen. So, yan ho, may mga over 22,000 and over 2,000 establishments ang naka-record po dyan, at sa empleyado naman po over 22,000. Ay, opo, dun sa mga na-disapprove, dun sa record lang ng DTI, no? Kasi yung DTI supposed to cover, hinati-hati itong mga safety seal inspection. No, for example, sa DTI, yung mga retailing, hardware, service shops, repair shops, and other retail business establishments, yung DOT, of course, yung mga DOT-related establishments, mga LGUs, kasi nandyan silang bahala sa mga restaurants, at ang mga malls, at ang DILG, bahala naman sa mga government establishments. Very soon, I think we're...
Fully vaccinated individuals should keep their vaccination cards as the government prepares a digital identification system to verify the COVID-19 vaccination status of an individual. Now, DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said the Department of Information and Communications Technology is expected to launch the digital vaccine ID within a month. Take a look.
Definitely. So, ang estado po niyan, binubuo po ito ngayon, and that's the reason why yung mga ipapakita ngayon, let's say nung over 65 years old, would be just yung vaccine card na paper or document or card na binigay ho ng LGUs kung saan sila nabakunahan. But very soon, I think we're in a few weeks, mga 1 month, ay mabubuo na rin itong digital card natin, hopefully a QR code also, system kung saan centralized, consolidated na, and digital form yung ating vaccine ID. No? Para ito ho, in effect, authenticated na sila po talaga yung mga nabakunahan. At maganda ho talaga yung digital system na yan. According to the ICT, mga 1 month po ay nakalabas na yan.
Now, solar panel wings spread out and 2 camera eyes pointing ahead. China's Mars rover Zhurong struck a bird-like pose as it explored the red planet in photos released by the country's space agency today. Zhurong's touchdown in May was the first ever successful probe landing by any country on its first Mars mission, a milestone in China's ascent to space superpower status. The rover has since been studying the topography of a vast Martian lava plain known as the Utopia Planitia. Photos published by the China National Space Administration showed tracks in the red soil left by Zhurong, which the agency described as China's imprint after it drove onto the planet's surface, form a landing platform adorned with a large Chinese flag. China has now sent astronauts into space, powered probes to the moon, and landed a rover on Mars, one of the most prestigious of all prizes in the competition for dominion of space. The United States and Russia are the only other countries to have reached Mars, and only the former has operated a rover on the surface.
Now let's take a look at these images as NASA streamed footage of the partial solar eclipse rising over northern Canada Thursday morning. The eclipse is visible to most of the northern hemisphere, appearing as far east as Mongolia. Take a look.
Very soon, I think we're in a few weeks, mga 1 month, ay
Olympic chiefs have decided to propose the Australian city of Brisbane as host of the 2032 Summer Olympic Games at next month's International Olympic Committee session, IOC President Thomas Bach announced Thursday. Take a look.
The IOC Executive Board has decided to propose Brisbane 2032 for election by the IOC session in Tokyo as host of the Games of the 35th Olympiad. With this decision, the Executive Board was following the recommendation of the future host commission for the Games of the Olympiad, chaired by IOC member Christine Kloster-Asen. And now it's in the hands of the IOC members to vote on this proposal on 21st of July in Tokyo. This commission looked in depth at all aspects of Brisbane 2032, the master venue plan, sustainability, feasibility, legacy, and highlighting the impressive public support, as well as the strong support across the entire political spectrum.
The 102 IOC members will now vote on the proposal at the IOC session on July 21st in Tokyo, ahead of this summer's Olympic Games in the Japanese capital. The IOC had said in February that Brisbane was the preferred candidate to host the Games, adding it would enter targeted dialogue with the Australian bid organizers. The awarding of the 2032 Olympics is the first to take place with a new election method adopted in June 2019 in an attempt to counter application fees and a lack of serious bids.
In tennis action, Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova and Barbara Krejcikova, two of the most unlikely Grand Slam finalists of the modern era, meet in Saturday's French Open title match at the conclusion of a shock-heavy tournament. Take a look. World number 32, Pavlyuchenkova has reached this stage for the first time at the 52nd attempt, 10 years after making a first Slam quarterfinal in Paris. Krejcikova, ranked one place lower, has long been labeled a doubles specialist, and this is just her fifth appearance in a main draw singles at the Slams, having never previously got beyond the last 16. However, both women have capitalized on a draw where the top seeds fell and just kept falling. World number one and 2019 champion Ashley Barty hobbled out in the second round. Serena Williams was knocked out in the fourth round. World number two Naomi Osaka withdrew after one match, while 2018 champion Simona Halep never even made it to Paris.
In another tennis news, Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal clash for the 58th time in their historic rivalry on Friday on the same court where they first met 15 years ago, with a place in the French Open final at stake. It is tennis's greatest modern matchup between two men who have harvested 38 Grand Slam titles and 72 Masters between them. Djokovic has spent more weeks at world number one than any other player, while 13-time French Open winner Nadal has not been out of the top 10 in 16 years. Nadal will start Friday's semifinal as favorite, buoyed by his record of 105 wins and just 2 losses in his Roland Garros career. The 35-year-old also has the edge over Djokovic on clay with a 19-7 career lead and 7-1 in Paris. Djokovic hasn't beaten Nadal on the surface since Rome in 2016. He can, however, boast of being one of only 2 men to have defeated Nadal in Paris in the quarterfinals in 2015. Nadal defeated 2016 champion Djokovic in straight sets in last year's final, the Serb's third loss in the championship match in Paris to the Spaniard.
In NBA action, the Milwaukee Bucks started strong and clung on late to beat the Brooklyn Nets 86-83 and claw their way back into their NBA Eastern Conference second-round playoff series. Chris Middleton scored 35 points, and two-time NBA Most Valuable Player Giannis Antetokounmpo scored 33 as the Bucks routed in 2 games in Brooklyn, trimmed the deficit in the best-of-7 series to 2-1. Kevin Durant led the Nets with 30 points and 11 rebounds, but his 3-point attempt to force overtime bounced off the rim, and the Bucks avoided falling into a 0-3 hole. The Bucks were coming off a humiliating 39-point loss to the Nets in Game 2 in Brooklyn, and in the first game of the series in Milwaukee, they came out playing as if their lives depended on the outcome. Antetokounmpo and Middleton scored 15 points apiece in the first quarter as the Bucks seized a 30-11 lead. The Nets turned the tables in the second period, opening the quarter on a 15-2 scoring run. They outscored the Bucks 31-15 in the second, but they didn't get their first lead of the game until the third quarter, when Bruce Brown's jump shot put them up 65-64 with just over a minute remaining in the period.
Here's MJ Racajo for the latest in showbiz.
It's kind of the question. She's not.
Hi, MJ Ricardo here. Another showbiz updates.
You should say. The cultural phenomenon picks up where we left off, with June's fight for freedom against Gilead. But the risks she takes bring unexpected and dangerous new challenges.
and her desire for justice and revenge threaten to consume her and destroy her most cherished relationships. Did June fail as a leader? Well, let's find out. Played by Elizabeth Moss.
It's kind of the question. She's not supposed to be a superhero. She's not supposed to be the leader of the resistance. And that was so beautifully written by Margaret Atwood in the book, that she's so human. So I feel like this is a very big question, because it's what we struggle with every season. You know, it's what I think she goes into this thinking very much that she is going to protect her friends and protect handmaids, and she's not going to give up their location, and she's trying to be the leader. She's trying to be that person.
The Emmy-winning series, The Handmaid's Tale, would be its final season 4 next week, only on Hulu.
My name is June Osborne. I'm a citizen of the United States.
That's it for Showbiz Updates. I'm Jerry Carter here. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, MJ.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, MJ. And it's nice to see you again. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much again for joining us. Tomorrow, the news continues at 11 p.m. Philippine time. I'm CJ Hero. Please join us again.
See you back tomorrow, CJ, and we'll see you back, everybody, tomorrow. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant. Kills